What are the current like edges of the bubble universe? Like what things are outside of the realm of possibility on bubble right now? What things are like maybe surprisingly possible?
So what's really tough right now, uh, and when I talk about bubble, I mean using bubble without extending it with code. Because today, because you can extend bubble with code, there's honestly no limit in terms of what you can do. I mean, because if something is not there, just write code. But let's say you don't know how to code and you don't want to hire someone to do that. Bubble is going to be very good at for applications, where the main ways you interact with things is through, images, forms, buttons, maps, these kind of things. If you're trying to build like a platform game, for instance, it's going to be challenging because a platform game creates new user interface elements. Again, if you start writing code, well, you could code the missing part of the platform game and that would be fine, but let's say you can do it. Another thing from a functionality standpoint, the one thing where Bubble is not really good at is, intense data processing machine learning algorithm. Whenever, the good way to think about it is, can a product manager describe exactly what he wants to build? And when I mean product manager, I don't necessarily mean something with that title, but something with that mindset. So for instance, one of the competing communities of indie hackers, Product Hunt. Product Hunt is full of people like this, like people that are not super technical, but they can they can think of a product and how it should function. When you can think about it, then you should be able to build it visually. Um, a product manager is not going to design in his head. He can design in his head what the application will look like and what it does. He's not going to design in his head what something like a machine learning optimization algorithm would look like. That's where Bubble is not great at.
Do you see a future where there's a like bubble for machine learning?
I mean, some people are trying to do that, I think, like trying to create something a little bit more visual. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know enough that field to know where is the potential. I'm sure we can do better with high level things. Having said that, I do think that at some point, understanding well, the different data sets you have and everything will require some kind of low level understanding. Now, whether it's going to be, excuse me, whether it's going to be through a visual interface or through code, it will still be something that is fairly low level and not for everyone. And it's fine, by the way. In some ways, I find, this tendency we have to tell everyone they learn how to code kind of weird because, I mean, I hope the world we're going to live in 20 years is not a world where everybody is an engineer, on his computer typing something. That's pretty depressing. At some point, engineering is a specialized task for people that really love it. And for other people, they should not be limited by what they can do with technology because it's everywhere. But we shouldn't expect them to behave like specialists and engineers.
Where do you see like what are the current goals right now for Bubble as a company? What are you
Our
trying
goal
to
is
do
to
in the next
be,
couple of years?
well, exactly 2 years from now, I want to be like the primary place where people go to when they want to start a web-based business. We have a very strong focus on entrepreneurship. I'm not trying to get into enterprise or other places. My goal is really, when someone starts thinking, okay, I have an idea for a product that I think could be used by people and eventually either generate like a large community or income or whatever. I want them to start looking at Bubble and being like, okay, can I build this here? Then my guess is that we will never get to 100% hit rate. Like, at some point people be like, oh, actually I know how to code, or maybe I'll just write code myself, but I want them to come there first. And then hopefully we keep 90 or 80% of the people. That's for the next couple of years. If we do that, then we have a very strong foundation. It's a little bit like what Stripe and AWS have done, like betting very aggressively on very early stage companies first, and then, or even Shopify with like mom and pop shops. Offline stores, and then you grow with them, which is something that we've done already, but I want to do it at a much larger scale. And then you grow with them until a point where some of your clients become almost like enterprise type, even though they're not enterprise, but you're already in the house and they start asking you for some features that are more like of an enterprise type of things, like, whether it's compliance or like, large team management type of things. And once we have that, then we'll develop the product for them, because our commitment is always when someone starts on Bubble, we're really allocating more resources to him or her or that team that to potential users that we don't have yet. That's a very strong moral commitment we have with our users. So we build that for them to make sure they can scale nicely on us. And then we use the features we've built for this use case to extend in other places like enterprise. I do think there is a tremendous potential in the enterprise space. There is a huge need for like large companies. One of the challenges that we'll have at some point is that if you're not a big tech company, it's very, very hard to hire very good web developers, because if you're a good web developer, you want to work at Facebook or Bubble or Google, but you don't want to work at, BP. And BP needs software. So BP is great to hire good oil engineers, but for like IT systems, which are very core to anything they do now, it used not to be the case, by the way. Like 30 years ago, IT was a support function. Today, any business is some way is a technology business, but they don't have the ethos and attraction power to hire very good engineers today. And I don't think this is going to change. And so there is a fantastic potential and a huge need here for a tool that empowers non-traditional engineers, so like bubblers or like visual developers or business people, to build things themselves, because that will be very needed. One of the key best examples I would give of that is governments. I mean, governments have a lot of issues hiring good engineers. You're a good web developer, you don't want to work for an agency for the US government to build things, and that ends up being the not great launch of healthcare.gov. Like if you remember, like a few years ago, where they had this website that didn't work because it just didn't have the right people to build it. We need to lower the bar to create things so that way more people can do it, and so it's not only big tech companies that have these people.